It's not what you think, Harry. Jamie's voice was soft, careful, like a surgeon trying to stitch a wound without causing more pain. But Harry wasn't wounded. He was watching. Waiting. The hotel footage played on his laptop, flickering in the dimly lit room. He had paused it at just the right moment, when Jamie walked into the suite, when she dropped her purse onto the bed and turned toward the man standing by the window. A man who wasn't him. The silence between them stretched, thick as fog. Jamie didn't reach for the laptop. She didn't look at the screen. She already knew what was there. Harry! She tried again, taking a careful step forward. He lifted a hand, stopping her in her tracks. You checked in under your maiden name, he said. Flat. Cold. You left your ring in the car, and you told me you'd be in meetings all day. His voice didn't rise, didn't shake. He wasn't angry. He was calculating. Jamie flinched. She was good at lying. She had done it before. Twisted words like silk, ribbons, wrapped deceptions in smiles. But this time she wasn't in control, because he saw it happen. The screen reflected in his eyes. Jamie, leaning close, a hand touching a man's chest. The moment their lips met. The moment she betrayed everything, she wasn't even hesitant. Harry felt something inside him, something dark, sharp, and irreversible. This wasn't heartbreak. This was clarity. Jamie finally dropped the act. Her face hardened, her shoulders squaring. The apology, the fake regret, never came. Instead, she sighed, annoyed. How did you even get this footage? Harry almost laughed. That was her concern? Not that she had cheated, not that she had lied, but that she got caught. He leaned back, fingers tapping against the table. That's what you're worried about, Jamie. His voice was calm, too calm, deadly calm. She took a breath, her hands tightening into fists. For the first time, she looked afraid. Good. She should be. Harry had never been the kind of man who doubted easily. He wasn't paranoid. He wasn't insecure. He believed in logic, in evidence, in trusting what he could see. And for 3 years, he had trusted Jamie. Their relationship had been a seamless partnership, at least that's what he had thought. He had met her at an investors' networking event, where her intelligence had caught his attention before her beauty did. Jamie was sharp, ambitious, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never needed anyone. She wasn't. Like the women who clung, who begged for affection. She was independent, self-sufficient, and dangerously good at making people believe in her, including Harry. She worked in corporate consulting, which meant business trips were normal. Late-night meetings, urgent flights, last-minute cancellations, all part of the job. He never questioned it, never needed to. They were adults with separate careers, two powerful people moving through life side by side. And yet, standing there, staring at the footage of her in that hotel room with Patrick, he wondered how blind he had been. The betrayal itself wasn't even the worst part. It was the ease with which she had done it. No guilt, no hesitation. His mind flickered back to the beginning, to the first warning signs he ignored. The first time he should have known. A year ago, Jamie had come home late from another trip. She had smelled like hotel air fresheners and cheap red wine, her heels clicking across the wooden floor as she slipped into the apartment. Sorry, babe, the flight was delayed, she had said, dropping her bag on the couch and pressing a distracted kiss to his cheek. Harry hadn't thought twice about it until the next morning. Her phone buzzed at 6 a.m., lighting up with a message from Patrick. Patrick was her boss, a man she had spoken about in passing, a mentor she had called him, someone who had taken her under his wing early in her career. Patrick. Can't stop thinking about last night. She had been in the shower when Harry saw it. The words stared back at him from the lock screen, cold and undeniable. He didn't check the rest. He wasn't the type to invade privacy. Instead, he had asked her outright. Jamie, why is Patrick texting you at 6 in the morning about last night? She had barely blinked, Not a single crack in her expression. "Oh, that?" She had given him a casual laugh, drying her hair with a towel. "We closed a huge deal, and he got a little too excited at the bar. He's a flirt, Harry, but it's harmless. He knows I'm engaged, and he had believed her, because Jamie didn't sound like a liar." The second time he should have known. 6 months ago, they had attended a charity gala together. Jamie had been in one of those silk evening gowns that made every man in the room look twice, but she had only been looking at one man, Patrick. Harry had watched it happen from across the ballroom. The way Jamie smiled up at him, the way Patrick leaned in just a little too close, a little too familiar. Harry wasn't the jealous type, but he wasn't stupid either. When they got home that night, he had confronted her. "Do you have something to tell me?" Jamie had barely looked up from taking off her earrings. "About what?" "Patrick." This time she had sighed, exasperated. "Harry, are we really doing this? I work with the man. I have to be nice to him." "You don't have to look at him like that." She had turned then, crossing her arms. Her patience had worn thin. "Like what?" "God, Harry, you sound so insecure right now. Patrick is just my mentor, my boss. If you don't trust me, just say it." She had flipped it on him, made him feel like the paranoid one. So, again, he had dropped it. The final time. He should have known. 2 weeks ago, Jamie had mentioned her next business trip. "It's last minute," she had said over dinner, twirling pasta around her fork. "I'll be gone Friday through Sunday. Just a client meeting, nothing crazy." Harry had nodded. He had no reason to doubt her. Until, by chance, Patrick's name popped up on his social media. A tagged post, a hotel check-in, a timestamp. Harry hadn't said a word to Jamie about it. He had simply decided to see for himself, so he had reached out to an old contact, a security specialist who worked in corporate surveillance. And with a little persuasion, he had gotten access to the hotel's security feed. What he found had changed everything. Jamie wasn't in a meeting. She had never even brought her laptop. What she had brought was Patrick. And now, standing in their apartment, watching her stand there, caught, exposed, furious that she had lost control of the narrative, Harry felt nothing. Not heartbreak. Not anger, just certainty. He had wasted 3 years on a woman who had never been his to begin with, and now she was about to learn what it felt like to be on the losing side. Jamie stood in the center of their apartment, arms crossed, eyes calculating. Not scared, not guilty, just analyzing. She wasn't scrambling for an apology. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. No, Jamie was trying to figure out how to manipulate her way out of this. Harry had seen that look before, on Wall Street, in negotiations, in boardroom meetings. Jamie wasn't about emotions. She was about control, and right now, she was losing it. "Harry," she started, her voice dangerously smooth. "This isn't what it looks like." Harry exhaled through his nose, leaning back against the couch. "Jamie, don't insult me." The footage was still playing behind him. The cold, grainy image of her undoing her blazer in that hotel room. Patrick reaching for her waist, their laughter. "So, tell me," he continued, voice eerily calm. "What exactly does it look like?" Jamie's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being cornered. "I told you," she said, slower this time. "It was a business trip. Patrick happened to be there. Jamie," he interrupted, tone sharper now. "You weren't just in the same hotel. You checked in under your maiden name. You turned off your phone. You were inside that suite for hours." Jamie's lips parted slightly. A slip. A hesitation. That was when he knew. She had no excuse. The air was thick with silence. She was weighing her options, deciding which version of the lie to commit to. Finally, she let out a slow breath and said, "Okay, fine. I should have told you Patrick was there. But if you're expecting some dramatic confession, you're not getting one. You're overreacting." Harry almost laughed. Overreacting? He pushed himself off the couch, moving toward the kitchen counter, pouring himself a drink. His movements were slow, deliberate. Jamie's eyes flicked toward his hands, not in fear, but in anticipation. She was waiting to see how much of this she could control. She still thought she could control it. He took a sip and set the glass down. You know, he said conversationally, it's funny, I almost didn't look into this, almost didn't check the footage, almost just believed you. Jamie said nothing. And do you know why? He turned to face her fully. Because I thought you respected me enough to at least lie better than this. Jamie's nostrils flared. Anger. Excuse me? You heard me. He folded his arms, tilting his head. You've been lying for months, haven't you? I want to know, was it exciting? Did it give you a rush, sneaking around? Or was Patrick just a convenient little escape? Jamie's hands clenched into fists. You don't know what you're talking about, Harry. Oh, but I do. He took out his phone and scrolled. He had more than just the hotel footage. Receipts from expensive restaurants. Luxury spa appointments, ones she never mentioned. A duplicate. Key card for a penthouse suite, paid for by Patrick. He slid the phone across the counter. Tell me, Jamie, what does this look like? She stared at it. At everything. The evidence she couldn't refute. And then, finally, her expression cracked. But it wasn't regret. It was fury. You've been spying on me? She snapped. Harry let out a low, humorless laugh. That's what you're upset about? Not that you got caught? Just that I figured it out? Jamie took a step forward, her mask slipping entirely now. There was no shame, no guilt, just frustration. I don't owe you an explanation, Harry, she said, voice icy. I don't have to report my every move like some housewife waiting for permission. Harry raised an eyebrow. Housewife? He smirked. Oh, that's rich, because I seem to recall you were very interested in being a wife, until now. Jamie didn't flinch, but he could see it, the flicker of something in her eyes. Fear? No. Frustration, that she was losing. And Harry knew then. She had never planned to marry him. The ring on her finger? A placeholder. Their engagement? Convenient. The life they had built together? A game she had played better than him, until now. Jamie's silence was deafening. I see, he murmured. Jamie straightened, her chin lifting. You're blowing this out of proportion, Harry, she said, voice eerily composed again. Patrick is just a friend. If you can't handle that, maybe this relationship was never meant to last. There it was. The final card she was playing. Gaslighting. Rewriting the narrative. Turning herself into the victim. Harry exhaled through his nose, gripping the edge of the counter. Jamie. His voice was quiet now. Dangerous. Final. I don't care what you call it, but this was your choice, and I hope whatever future you thought you were building with Patrick was worth it. Jamie blinked, something sharp in her expression. What the hell does that mean? He checked his watch. It means, Jamie, that while we were having this conversation, I sent all of this, the receipts, the footage, the hotel logs, to Patrick's wife. For the first time all night, Jamie paled. The color drained from her face entirely. Harry, you said it wasn't cheating. He tilted his head. Let's see if Patrick's wife agrees. And just like that, Jamie's entire world collapsed. Harry had expected rage. Expected screaming, accusations, maybe even crocodile tears, but Jamie stood there, pale and silent, her lips parted like she had just been punched in the gut. Good. She deserved to feel that. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Harry. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but he wasn't interested in whatever pathetic excuse was forming in her mind, because nothing she could say would change the facts. The evidence had already been delivered. To Patrick's wife. To her friends. To her family. There was no undoing it. No charming her way out. No damage control. Jamie finally understood that. But Harry? He didn't feel victory. He felt nothing. It should have satisfied him, watching her unravel, knowing that everything she had built on lies was crumbling beneath her feet. But instead, there was only a hollow emptiness. 3 years. That's how long he had spent believing her, defending her, loving her, and it had all been a joke. He stared at Jamie now, and for the first time, he saw her clearly. Not as the woman he had wanted to marry, not as the partner he had trusted, just another liar. Another person who had used him, twisted his faith in her into something cheap and disposable, and the worst part? She wasn't even sorry. Jamie finally took a step forward, her voice raw but still controlled. Harry, listen to me. No. He had listened enough. Listened when she had gaslit him. Listened when she had lied about Patrick. Listened when she had made him doubt his own instincts. Not anymore. You don't get to talk your way out of this, Jamie. She froze, and for the first time, he saw it. Fear. Not fear of losing him. Fear of losing everything. Her perfect image. Her convenient engagement. Her status as the untouchable Jamie who always got away with everything. Do you even feel bad? He asked, his voice calm. Too calm. Jamie blinked, as if surprised by the question. As if it had never even occurred to her, and that told him everything. She wasn't upset because she had betrayed him. She was upset because she had been caught. Jamie swallowed hard, forcing herself to hold his gaze. It didn't mean anything, she whispered. Harry almost laughed. Of course, the classic cheater's excuse. Didn't mean anything? He leaned back against the counter, arms folded. Then why lie? Why sneak around? Why hide it? Jamie's breathing was uneven now. She knew there was no answer that would save her, so she changed tactics. You're being cruel, Harry. Ah, there it was. The victim act. Harry exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head. Cruel? He repeated. Jamie, do you even hear yourself? You lied to me. You spent a weekend in a hotel room with another man. And now that you're facing the consequences, I'm the bad guy? Jamie's fists clenched. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice tight. Harry scoffed. You didn't care if you did. And that was worse. Jamie shook her head, her composure slipping. Harry, please, get out. Silence. The words hit harder than she had expected. Jamie's lips parted, but nothing came out. She had assumed he would give her a chance to explain, that he would still be the same man who loved her enough to listen. But that man was gone. She had killed him. Jamie didn't move. Not until Harry pulled out his phone and, without a hint of hesitation, started dialing security. Only then did her body react, her eyes flashing with something desperate. Harry, wait! You don't have to do this! I really do. And he hit call. Jamie had no choice. She grabbed her suitcase, the same one she had wheeled into the apartment like nothing was wrong, the same one she had used to return to the life she thought was waiting for her. She hesitated. She wanted to say something. Maybe one last attempt at damage control. But what could she say? That she didn't mean it? That Patrick wasn't worth losing everything? That if she had just been a little more careful, she could have gotten away with it? Harry met her eyes one last time, and for the first time, Jamie saw it. The man she had underestimated, the one she had thought was too trusting, too soft, too in love with her to ever walk away. She had played the game and lost. Jamie turned on her heel, her breath sharp as she wheeled her suitcase toward the door, and as she stepped over the threshold, Harry's voice stopped her. Jamie. She froze. Slowly, she turned back. You said it didn't mean anything, he murmured. Let's see if Patrick's wife agrees. Jamie flinched. Then, without another word, she was gone. And for the first time in 3 years, Harry finally felt free. Harry had thought it was over. Jamie was gone. The truth was out. And yet, the story wasn't finished. Not even close. 2 days after throwing Jamie out, Harry sat in his office, scrolling through reports when his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You made a mistake. Harry's jaw tightened. Jamie. Of course, she wouldn't just disappear. She never lost quietly. He ignored the message. He wasn't playing her games anymore. But then, minutes later, His office door swung, when his assistant, looking uneasy, "Sir, there's someone here to see you." Before he could ask who, Patrick walked in. The audacity. Harry didn't move, didn't react. He simply leaned back in his chair, eyes cold. "You've got about 10 seconds to tell me why you're here before I have you thrown out." Patrick smiled, smug, overconfident, like he thought he still had the upper hand. "Come on, Harry. No need for threats," Patrick said, adjusting his cuffs. "We're both professionals, and I think we need to talk." Harry gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Right. You mean the kind of talk where I tell your wife everything? Oh, wait. I already did." Patrick's smirk didn't fade. "Yeah, I got that message loud and clear," he admitted. "But here's the thing, you should have thought bigger." Harry's brows lifted slightly. "Bigger." Patrick stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You think you've won, but Jamie's not done. She's already talking to people, and let's just say, she has a very interesting version of events." Harry's fingers curled against the desk. Jamie was twisting the story. Of course she was. "What's her angle?" Harry asked, voice sharp. Patrick gave a mocking laugh. "You know Jamie. She's resourceful. She's telling people you've been controlling, jealous, that you went behind her back, invaded her privacy, even—" He made a show of shrugging. "Even that you were abusive." Harry's pulse slowed. Not out of fear, but out of pure, simmering disgust. Jamie wasn't just covering her tracks. She was trying to destroy him. "She's spinning a great story," Patrick continued. "And let's face it, people love to believe. A woman scorned." Harry stared at him for a long moment, then he smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "You know, Patrick, for a guy who just got exposed for cheating on his wife, you seem pretty confident." Patrick's expression flickered, just for a second, and there it was, the crack. Harry had seen men like him before, cocky, arrogant, thinking, they're untouchable. Jamie might have been trying to ruin Harry, but she had picked the wrong man to play with. "Let me tell you a little secret," Harry said, standing up. "Jamie's good at lying, but I'm better at exposing the truth." Patrick scoffed. "And what truth is that?" Harry leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "That Jamie wasn't just cheating on me?" Patrick frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Harry pulled out his phone, a new piece of footage, not from the hotel this time, from a different location, a different night, and a different man. Patrick stared at the screen, confusion flickering into something else. Realization. Jamie hadn't just played Harry. She had played Patrick, too. "Recognize him?" Harry asked, watching as Patrick's face darkened. It was one of Patrick's own business partners, caught on camera the same way Jamie had been caught with him. Patrick stiffened. Jamie hadn't just been building an exit plan with Patrick. She had been lining up her next target. "She was never just with you," Harry murmured. "You were just another stepping stone. And now, she's already moved on." Patrick's jaw clenched. "You're bluffing." Harry tilted his head. "Am I?" Patrick snatched the phone off the desk, replaying the footage, and there, right there, Jamie, in another man's arms. Patrick's hands tightened into fists. His nostrils flared. He looked murderous. Harry? Harry just watched, because he didn't have to destroy Jamie. She had already done it herself. Patrick was silent for a long time. His hands shook slightly as he placed the phone back down. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out. Harry exhaled slowly, settling back in his chair. Jamie thought she had won. She thought she could rewrite history, make herself the victim. But in the end, she had betrayed too many people, and now they were all coming for her. Harry had never been a man of revenge. He had always believed in letting people destroy themselves, in letting time expose who they truly were. And Jamie? She had finally run out of places to hide. It started with the scandal, the footage Harry had shown Patrick. It didn't stay a secret. Within hours, Patrick's business partners knew. His reputation was ruined. His career was on fire, and in his rage, he didn't go down alone. He exposed Jamie. He told everyone, the other men, the lies, the manipulation. Jamie had spent years crafting her perfect image, the ambitious consultant, the woman with a golden future. Now, she was a joke. News spread like wildfire in corporate circles. No firm wanted to touch her. Clients started pulling out. Her entire network turned against her. By the time Jamie realized what was happening, it was too late. Her phone calls were ignored. Doors were closed in her face. She had always thought she was the smartest person in the room. Now no one even wanted her in the room, and when she had nowhere else to go, she showed up at Harry's door. Harry wasn't surprised. He had been waiting. He heard the knock. Slow, hesitant. The sound of someone who knew she was no longer welcome. He took his time, poured himself a drink, walked to the door, but didn't open it right away. Let her stand there. Let her feel what it was like to be the one on the outside. Finally, after a long pause, he pulled the door open, and there she was, Jamie. But not the Jamie he had once known. She wasn't polished. She wasn't composed. She looked exhausted. Hollow. For the first time, she looked small. "Harry," she breathed. "Please." He just stared at her. "Please what?" he asked, voice even. Jamie swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "You have to help me." Harry let out a small, humorless laugh. "Do I?" Jamie's jaw tensed. "I know you hate me," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "But you know me, Harry. You know I don't deserve this." Harry just studied her, and for the first time, he felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no nostalgia, just clarity. "You don't deserve this?" he echoed. "Jamie, help me understand. What exactly don't you deserve?" Jamie exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I made a mistake, okay? But you and I, we were good together. We understand each other. If you just help." "Me, we can what?" he interrupted. "Pretend none of this happened?" Jamie's lips parted, but she had no answer, because she had never imagined she would end up here. Jamie had always been in control, always had backup plans, always had someone to fall back on. But this time, there was no one left. She was alone, and Harry was the last person who could save her, but he wouldn't. He had spent too long believing in someone who had never believed in him. Jamie was silent for a long moment. Then, finally, her shoulders slumped. "You really won't help me?" Harry took a slow sip of his drink, and then, without a single flicker of hesitation, "No." Jamie inhaled sharply, her eyes widening in shock, like she had never even considered that possibility. She had thought she could walk back in, that he would still see something in her worth saving, that he would still be the same man who had once loved her. But that man didn't exist anymore. Harry stepped back, and then, as casually as if she were nothing more than a stranger, he closed the door in her face. Jamie was gone, and Harry was finally free. Jamie was gone. Harry stood there for a moment, his hands still, resting on the doorknob. He expected to feel something, relief, anger, maybe even regret, but instead he felt weightless. 3 years. 3 years of trusting, loving, believing in someone who never deserved it. And yet, as he shut the door, it didn't feel like the end of something painful. It felt like a beginning. He walked back to the living room, the soft hum of the city outside his windows. He poured himself another drink, sat down on the couch, and for the first time in months he exhaled. Jamie had been his biggest mistake, but his biggest lesson. Life moved on, and so did Harry. His name had survived the scandal untouched. Jamie's downfall had been her own doing, and the corporate world had little patience for liars who burned their bridges. She lost everything. Her firm cut ties. Her network shunned her. The people she had built her career on wanted nothing to do with her. And Patrick, disgraced, divorced, financially ruined. Harry never reached out. Never checked in. He didn't need to. Some people weren't worth saving. One evening, he sat at a rooftop bar, whiskey in hand, watching the city lights flicker below. He wasn't waiting for anything. No schemes, no betrayals lurking in the shadows. For the first time in a long time, he was just living. "You look like a man who just got out of prison." The voice was light, teasing. Harry turned, eyebrows raising, slightly as he met Alice's gaze. Alice, Jamie's old friend. Or at least she had been, before Jamie had torched every relationship she had. Harry hadn't seen Alice since before the breakup. Since before Jamie had imploded. But now here she was, sitting at the bar beside him, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "And what makes you think I was in prison?" he asked, sipping his drink. Alice shrugged, twirling the stem of her wine glass between her fingers. "Because I used to watch you and Jamie together." Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp. "And you looked trapped." Harry exhaled a small laugh. "So what?" he mused. "You knew all along?" Alice hesitated, then sighed. "I suspected," she admitted. But Jamie was most convincing. She made sure no one ever saw her for who she really was, even me. Harry studied her for a moment. Alice had always been different from Jamie, more blunt, sharper, but she had never interfered. "And yet you never said anything," he pointed out. Alice met his gaze evenly. "Would you have believed me?" Silence. Harry let out a slow breath. "No," he admitted, because back then he had still wanted to believe in Jamie. Alice nodded. "Exactly." She took a sip of her wine, watching him. "So, tell me," she said. "Now that you're free, what's next?" Harry leaned back, letting the cool, night air wash over him. For once, he didn't have an answer, and for once, he was okay with that. "Anything I want," he finally said. Alice smiled. "Good answer." They clinked glasses, and just like that, Harry moved forward. For real this time.